Hey everyone, I know it's been a long time, but Daddy's podcast is starting right now.
Welcome back to the Lessons for Success show. I'm your host, Adam Wardlaw, middle school science teacher and high school football coach here in the great state of South Carolina. I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far, and I know we have a great episode lined up ahead of you. I just want to thank everyone who's been tuning into the episode so far. Hopefully you've been able to get something out of it and some valuable insight from some of the guests we've been able to have on the show. Remember, new episodes come out every Sunday, and the show is available on everywhere that podcasts can be found, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Keep up with the show on social media at L4S Show, that's the number 4, or use the hashtag L4S Show. Again, that's the number 4. You can also download and send in messages to the show by using the Anchor app. Feel free to send any questions or comments related to the show, and it could be featured in future episodes of the podcast.
Daddy, who are you talking to?
Coach Brent Thompson is entering his 4th season as the Citadel's head football coach in 2019, and notably compiled a 15-8 record overall and an 11-5 mark in Southern Conference play in his first 2 seasons at the helm of the Bulldog program. Coach Thompson was named the Southern Conference Coach of the Year after his first season with the Citadel in 2016 when they won the conference championship and earned a playoff berth. In this Lesson for Success, Coach Thompson shares his journey in life, which includes his humble beginnings as a college football coach. You can follow Coach Thompson on Twitter at Coach_B Thompson. Enjoy.
Well, first started out I grew up in New York and spent most of my time in the Northeast. My dad was a high school football coach. He was a middle school health teacher. And for 36 years, I really watched him and I watched his interactions with his players and the community. And that's really what got me into coaching is I love the way that he interacted with players. I love the way that he really took guys every single year, a different group of guys, and made them successful or held them accountable and did things that were going to probably promote a little bit of that culture within his program throughout the years, and was going to carry over in a lot of those young people that he was touching throughout those years. And that's what made me get into it. And I talked a lot with my dad, and I'd spent some time. I actually did some substitute teaching in the high school and realized that I thought the college route was going to be the route that I wanted to go to. So I geared everything that I did when I graduated from college. Going into college, I first started out making $2,300 a year at a small Division III school in Pennsylvania, and I had one of the best experiences of my life. I worked for a really great football coach there, a guy by the name of Darwin Bro, and really Coach Bro was one of those guys that was not above anything as the head football coach. He was going to get down in the nitty-gritty with you, and he was going to do all the grunt work. And I enjoyed my 2 great years there with him. And at the end of my second year, I decided I was coaching on the defensive side. I wanted to move over and coach on the offensive side. Had an opportunity to work for a guy that had been coaching for many, many years at a Division I AA FCS program out on Long Island. And I never coached wide receivers before in my life. I had an opportunity to go and learn something new. Never played wide receiver, so it was completely an adjustment out of my comfort zone for me. I spent 10 months out there coaching at Stony Brook University for a guy by the name of Sam Kornhauser. One of the best guys that you'll meet in college football. Was in it for all the right reasons. He wanted to see his guys graduate. Had been there many, many years and had retired from there. And after about 10 months there, I had an opportunity to go and move onto a full scholarship program where I was coaching the running backs once again, just kind of developing my resume. I took a job for $10,000 living in Boston, Massachusetts, which was a great town. I worked for who is now the defensive coordinator at Michigan, a guy by the name of Don Brown. And Don had actually gone to my college. I didn't know it at the time. He had gone to Norwich University, was a fairly well-known FCS defensive coordinator, was the head coach at a small Division III school back in the early 90s. But I learned a lot from Coach Brown. I learned, he walked the line of being able to discipline his players, and really being able to put his arm around them. It was a great experience for me. He was a defensive guy. I coached on the offensive side once again at the running back spot. But I also learned what it was like to have scholarships, to deal with scholarship program. It's a little bit more of a higher stress kind of an environment there. And I was coaching football for less than 5 years at the time. So it was more accountability. It was more, you've got to be on your game. You're held to a little bit different recruiting standard. So really, as far as a resume builder was concerned, it was one of the best things that I had done, just to put myself into a little bit more of a pressure cooker situation every single day. And that's what it was there. It was great. We had a lot of success. My last year was we were 10-2. That was the first conference title that they had in years. They've since dropped the program. That was not a very good FCS program. Coach Brown had left and gone to UMass, and about 4 or 5 years later, they had dropped the program. I had then taken a job at Bucknell University. After that, I spent 2 years at Northeastern. And Bucknell was really where I learned about every single part of my trade, which I think is the best thing that you could possibly do. Is I had started off as a wide receivers coach in a triple option offense, which is not a whole lot of really learning the pass game, but I was able to learn a lot of the run game just from an outsider's perspective looking in. I learned about all the offensive line techniques. That's where I really started to get into offensive football. My second year there, I was very fortunate enough. I went and coached the quarterbacks, and I spent 4 years coaching the quarterbacks at Bucknell and learning the intricacies of the triple option. And I thought that was going to be the route that I ended up sticking with the rest of my career, really, is so for the next 15 years I was involved in the triple option. But it was a learning experience there. I'd learned how to be the wide receivers coach on the outside, the quarterbacks coach. I was coaching the fullbacks at the time. We coached them together. But I had also become the recruiting coordinator and saw a little bit of different end of things. I thought no matter what, I needed to make myself marketable because this is a very tenuous at best profession, and someday you could find yourself out of work. And I became I coached that for 4 years, and then I went on to coach the offensive line at Bucknell, which was a completely different animal. I would coach the skills for my whole career. Then you coach the offensive line, which was probably the 2 best years of coaching, not only from a learning perspective, but the different guys that you're dealing with. Football is a fabulous and it's a wonderful game, and the best game that I ever invented because you bring together so many different people. You've got big guys, you've got small guys, you've got different culture guys, you've got different income level from everybody that comes into one, and they create this team. It's not just one particular type of person that plays football. It's all these different bodies and people that it takes to be able to be successful. But that was what learning on the offensive line was all about for me. Coached that for 2 years. My last year there, I was the offensive coordinator, and it was the first time I had an opportunity to call plays. And I had learned a tremendous amount of calling plays. That there is a skill behind it. It's a learned skill as well. The number one thing that you need to be as a play caller, I realized at that moment, was you need to be in complete control of everything. You need to have a pretty good idea of what you're going to do up front, what you're going to do on the back end, and how everything fits together. And I was fortunate enough to be able to coach all the wide receivers. I had coached everything but the A-backs, but I had experience coaching running backs before, so I had a pretty good idea. Once I left there, we were not very good my first year. We were actually pretty bad, and we were 4-7, and subsequently we had gotten let go. So I had made it for 7 years there at Bucknell University. I had met my wife there. She was an athletic trainer. She had been there about 12 years. I had gone from making $10,000 my first year to making about $62,000 my last year there. I had bought my first house. I bought the house that I wanted there. Really, I had my eye on that house for about 3 or 4 years since my wife and I had gotten married. I found the house that I really wanted. I lived in that house for 10 months. And before we had gotten fired, I had gutted the house. I had made it everything that I wanted to. Took the kitchen out, put hardwood floors in. Brought my father-in-law up, brought my dad up, and we did all the work ourselves. And unfortunately, I was only able to really enjoy that house for about a little bit less than 10 months. My wife lived in there a little bit longer than that because I transitioned down. So I was out of work, and I had to come to the realization that I really wasn't qualified for much else. I coached football for about 15 years at the time. And, I started looking at, do you sell cars? Do you sell insurance? It's like, what could you possibly do with this limited amount of skill set that you have? And got a phone call one day from a buddy that had recommended me to Bucknell University. Never lived anywhere in the South. My mom and dad had relocated from New York down to North Carolina. And I thought this was a good opportunity for me to kind of get out of my circle of the Northeast. It was a good opportunity for me to be the offensive coordinator again. A guy by the name of Fred Goldsmith called me. And if anybody knows the name of Fred Goldsmith was AFCA Coach of the Year. He was the Bobby Dodd Coach of the Year. He was at Rice. He was the head coach at Rice. He was the head coach at Duke. He was the defensive coordinator for many years at Ken Hatfield at Arkansas. He worked for Ken Hatfield at the Air Force Academy. So he was a well-known guy, and I had known who Coach Goldsmith was just on the downside of his career and taking a Division II, kind of a rehab job. And I thought, man, this is a great opportunity for me to get out of this Northeast and get down there. And he started me off. He hired me for $36,000, and it ended up being the best job of my career. It was funny. The thing was, it was just what I really needed. I had kind of gotten beaten down and pounded down their time. This was everything in his career, made the highest possible level, and was in it for the right reasons. He was in it for the kids. What he was trying to do and what he was trying to do with the program, we carry on today. And it really set the foundation for the rest of my career and really set the foundation for what I wanted to be as a head coach. And that was a guy that really cared about kids and didn't really realize that the wins and losses will come if you have the right character kids in your program. And that's what we did. So I went to Lenoir-Rhyne. I didn't know anybody on the staff. Had a really great 4 years there. Coach Goldsmith had retired after about a year and a half of me being there. And it was all set out for me that Coach Mike Houston was going to take over the program. I had known about it. Coach Houston was the defensive coordinator on the staff, and we had gotten along great. And we had kind of carried it through. So we had taken a program that was really downtrodden for many years. We had gotten it to the first winning season in 35 years. We had beaten teams that they had never beaten before. We had gotten the program to 7 wins. And then when Coach Houston took over, we subsequently went to 8 wins, 9 wins. And then our last year there, we went to 13-2 and made it to the national championship game, which
Awesome.
was a phenomenal experience for all of us and the school itself. We were fortunate enough to get a job at the Citadel, and Coach Houston took the job, and I followed him down there. And it really was a great fit for me. I had gone to military college. I had understood what it was like and what it took to make it through a military college. And really, it just seemed like a place that I could go and be for a while. And when I'd gotten down there, I was the offensive coordinator for 2 years. Our first year there, we were trying to rebuild the program. We were just trying to establish an identity. And offensively, we were just going to do what we do and just kind of let the chips fall where they may and build from there. And little did we know, our second year there, we had been started off the year in 2015. We were 2-2, and really had just a rough go of it. We had gotten a beat down pretty good by Georgia Southern, and we headed into the bye week. We didn't know how good we possibly could be yet. We had a bye week, and then we had a team that we hadn't beaten in 16 years in Wofford, and we spent the whole week just trying to make ourselves better. And so we went to the Wofford game plan, and we ended up beating Wofford that year. We broke the streak of 16 straight years, and we ended up going. I think we won the next 5 straight games, and had made it to Chattanooga. And this was an interesting deal. Chattanooga had won it the previous 3 years. They had lost the week before to Mercer, so forcing us into a tie with them no matter what. We had the chance to beat them to win it outright. And unfortunately, we had lost to a very good Chattanooga team. But we had Chattanooga, and the last game of the year for us to make the playoffs was the South Carolina game. And essentially we thought we had to win the South Carolina game just to have a chance at the playoffs. So we split the title in the SoCon that year with a loss to Chattanooga, and we were pretty beat down by that. We thought we had a pretty good chance, and we had to go up there and play some, a team that was a little bit, on the down. Coach Spurrier had retired that year, and they were a little bit of a transition year. So if there was a good year to get them, that was the year to get them. So we were very fortunate enough to be able to hold the game really close at the end and give ourselves a chance to win. And we ended up winning by 2 points that day and going on to the FCS playoffs, which inevitably I think that game got Coach Houston the James Madison job after that. And I was fortunate enough to be promoted to the head coach. In my first year as the head coach, we were 10-2. We started off 10-0. We lost our last 2 games, one to North Carolina, a pretty good 10-win North Carolina team, and then we lost during the year, and that was Wofford. So interesting start to my head coaching career, where all I had to really do was kind of continue. We had a good roster coming back, but the next 2 years, which would have been 17 in this past year, 18, it was a little bit of a different experience for us. We had won just 10 games in the past 2 years. We had been 5-6 the last couple of years. And so we found out, what it was like to be able to have to rebuild a program and rebrand the program, which is where we're at right now. And I think it gave me an opportunity to kind of break away and kind of establish my own identity as the head football coach and use my life experiences and put my spin on the program instead of just trying to carry on what we had done throughout the past 2 years before I had become the head coach there.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned all that. What's that process look like where you're trying to, rebuild a program and definitely a program that's as storied as the Citadel, that's well known not just in the state of South Carolina, but definitely has a big national following. Always, I know a few Citadel alumni, and that's a really tight brotherhood that you form if you go to school there. What's it like to what's that process look like when you're trying to give a story program like the Citadel your own twist, and what would you say that twist that brand kind of looks like?
Well, so you go through your whole coaching career and you pick up things and you try to, when I get to this, I want to do this. And sometimes that's reality and sometimes that's really not reality, because you really have to adjust your thinking and your reality to the school that you're at. So the way that I envision it is that we're just a small portion of a bigger piece of the pie at Citadel, right? We want to be what's part of the school. We want to try to be very inclusive. We're a unique brand. The Citadel's a unique brand. So I want my players to be what the school is. I want them to be good members of the Corps Cadets. I want them to be good students. We've got a good academic program here. I want to see my guys graduate. I want to see them go on to military careers, as we do have a couple. I want to see them go on to be engineers. And that's what you've got to embrace at our place. You've got to embrace everything that the school can provide anybody that goes to school there. And I think that's where we start. We start with the big picture and we kind of whittle it down. And then we go to, the football program as to what do my guys have got to do to be able to be a part of that? Well, they've got to be good students. They've got to be guys that want to embrace the Corps Cadets and the life experiences that those can bring. And then you've got to be able to say, look, what's going to help you win at the Citadel? What's your brand of football there? And that's really the transition that we've gone through the last couple of years is, we're going to be a run-oriented. We're going to be a tough football team. We're going to be a stop-to-run kind of a defense. But it's really given me the opportunity to kind of go out there and grab the things that I really like about the school and bring them into the football program and try to go out there and recruit those guys to our program now, to the Citadel program, to something that the alumni can be proud of.
Well, something you mentioned earlier that kind of I wrote down, and since you mentioned kind of what y'all look for in your players and stuff, you talked about how in your journey, you were trying to make yourself marketable. You were doing these kind of different jobs that you might not necessarily thought you were going to pinpoint, but you kind of did these different things to make yourself marketable, and it forced you to step outside of your comfort zone. What are some things, in your prospective athletes or in coaches that you might potentially hire? What are some things that they can be doing to make themselves more marketable. I teach middle school, and on a daily basis, I can't tell you how many young men I hear say that they want to be professional athletes or college athletes, and they might be good at sports, but they're not necessarily well-rounded. What are some specific things that that those two types of people could do to make themselves more marketable?
Well, the number one thing that I look for, especially in hiring coaches, or even when you recruit anybody, is you look for what can they bring, what is their skill set, and I say this, I don't want 200 Brent Thompsons in my program. I want guys that are going to make me better. I want guys that bring different skill sets. My particular, I'm a great, kind of X and O. I like to be a ball coach kind of guy. But I also need guys that are going to be great recruiters around me. I need guys that are going to be great social media people around me. I need guys that are going to be able to be a little bit more diverse in their thinking than me. I'm a pretty black and white guy. I need to find somebody out there that can be a little bit more colorful out there and bring something else to the program. It's the same thing for the players that you recruit. Is I don't want just football players. I want guys. I've got guys in my program right now that play baseball. They play for Coach Skull on the baseball team. I've got 2 of those guys. I've got 5 guys that run track. I like guys because they bring a different skill set. I like guys that play basketball in high school because their feet are different. They encompass the good of those other skills and they bring them to the football field. The football field is where they all can come together because we require so many different dimensions on the field that you've got to be good in a lot of different areas to be able to be successful at football. You've got to not only be a great weightlifter, but you've also got to be great on your feet. You've got to be a great thinker. You've got to be able to, track fly balls. The two guys, one's a corner for me, one's a wide receiver that play on the baseball team. They both play in the outfield. They both track balls better than anybody on the football field. You can do anything. You can throw a ball out there and they'll go out there and get it. Those guys bring dimension to your program that you really need.
Yeah, that's awesome how you talk about people who kind of have that experience in different areas because especially in high school sports today, people feel like they need to focus in one particular field, and even in the professional world, people feel like to be good at their job, they need to focus on this one specific skill and stuff. But it sounds like you guys are trying to gather a variety of people in a diverse group of people where they can feed off of each other and help each other out in different ways.
Well, the other thing that you bring into it, you bring different locker rooms into it, is when you're part of different teams, you could see different team dynamics that take place. And as I alluded to before, it takes a lot to make a football program because you're bringing together a lot of different things. Well, those guys that can play on different teams, they know how to adapt and get into a locker room and kind of know what it's like to be a part of different people and different elements that can come together. Is when you're just playing one sport, all you just know is that one particular sport. And you have a tendency to just gravitate that way instead of being able to interact and blend and make a team. Because when it comes down to it and you graduate and sports are done, and at some point it happens to everybody, you're going to have to go to another team. Whether it's in the business world, you're going to have to go to another team. Whatever it is you're doing, people are working in teams now, and you got to find a way to relate and fit in every single team environment. Yeah,
it's funny you mentioned that. I have students day in and day out who they might be griping about one particular teacher or one particular person in their lives who, they just act like they can't stand. And, one thing I try to convey to them is that you got to be able to, talk to people and adapt to whatever classroom you're in or whatever setting you're in. And it's great to hear that those are things that you're trying to get into your program and trying to convey to potential recruits and stuff like that. Coach, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I appreciate all the time you've given me so far. What I kind of like to do to end these little interviews is ask, in your own opinion, what would be a key thing for someone to have if they're trying to achieve success in your life or in their life?
The number one thing is, and it goes back to this, and that was you got to have faith in what you're doing, number one. You got to have resiliency. You got to be persistent. Because there's many times throughout your career where when I graduated from college, I was making $2,300. I had made $10,000. It took me 5 years to make $20,000 in 1 year. And at the end of the day, it was all about this for me. And my mom and dad, they were the ones that really pushed me through it because those were tough days. You know, your buddies are out there starting off making $35,000, $40,000, $50,000, and they were, to you, they were rich. They were this. They had everything that you possibly could want. All right, but at the end of the day, we're on that right now. It was all well worth it for me. Is I learned how to live on nothing. I learned how to save my money. I learned how to, the value of a dollar. I know, as corny as that sounds, you need to learn the value of a dollar. How to be able to save and prepare, and those things. It's not openly out there all the time. So you've got to, if you truly want to do something and be persistent at it, it doesn't matter what the price is on it. You want to be successful. You want to impact young people. You want to enjoy what you're doing. It doesn't matter. If that's what drives you, then go ahead and do it. And no matter what, do it until you can't do it anymore, until you just can't possibly take it anymore, and keep on going with it. Because that's what it really took to be able to be a football coach, because we don't make a lot of money. We certainly don't start out making a lot of money. And I know the top 1% of us, they do extremely well. But even if you ask those guys, they took jobs almost probably making nothing. They took jobs volunteering. At one time, volunteering was a huge thing in our profession. But even now, we're saturated to the point where people can get hired for very, very a lot less than probably what they're worth.
That's it's funny you mentioned that, because nowadays I feel like at least a lot of the students that come through my classroom, or the players that I coach, at the first sign of adversity, they're trying to find some way to get out of it, some excuse to quit or some excuse to stop or something or another. And I think, whoever's listening to this will really benefit a lot by you sharing your story of just having to push through that tough moment, and ultimately led to a great career. And you guys are doing great things down there at the Citadel, and I appreciate you giving me your time this afternoon. If there's any way that anybody listening out there wanted to get in contact with you or anything like that, do you have any information you'd like to share where people could reach out to you?
Well, if you just, if you take it through the football office at the Citadel, it'll eventually get to me. If there's anything out there that, I'm a pretty open book. If anybody wants to come and visit me, I always invite them to come down. Charleston's a beautiful city, and it's a great school. And I'm fortunate enough to be there.
Daddy, what have we learned this week?
Coach Thompson's story is a great example of how honing skills in a variety of areas can only increase your chances for success down the road. Let's review this lesson for success. Coach Thompson began his coaching career at a small Division III school where he learned the value of being versatile. Coach Thompson coached a variety of positions in order to try and become more marketable for future endeavors in his career. Being marketable is a key that Coach Thompson emphasizes with potential recruits and his players. Many people feel like they need to specialize in very particular skill sets in order to be successful in their careers, but by being versatile, you can actually open yourself up to a lot more opportunities for advancement. Interact with the show on Twitter and Instagram at L4S Show. That's the number 4. You can mention us, or you can use the hashtag L4S Show. Again, that's the number 4. Episodes will also be placed on YouTube channel Lessons for Success Show. And now you can download the Anchor app in order to send messages directly into the show. These questions and messages can be featured on future episodes, so go ahead and download the Anchor app today. All of the episodes are available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else where podcasts can be found. So be sure to like, subscribe, and rate. Thank you for listening to Lessons for Success.
That's the end of our show. Thank you for listening.